In the quiet streets of 1970s America, a charming young man with an easy smile and polite manners walked unnoticed among the crowd. Nobody would have guessed that behind that disarming charm lay one of the most chilling killers in history. His name was Theodore Robert Bundy, but most simply knew him as Ted. He was intelligent, charismatic, and had a magnetic presence that drew people in without hesitation. Friends described him as bright and ambitious, destined for a successful future. Strangers saw him as handsome, polite, and trustworthy. But beneath the surface was a darkness that no one could have imagined. Ted's early life was marked by a troubled childhood, with questions surrounding his parentage and complicated family relationships. These unresolved secrets seemed to plant seeds of anger and confusion in his young mind. As he grew older, Ted developed a fascination with control, power, and the manipulation of others. His ability to charm people made him dangerous, because it meant no one suspected him of harboring violent desires. The 1970s were a time of cultural change, and young women sought freedom and independence, often walking alone at night or hitchhiking. Ted saw opportunity in this new freedom, a chance to blend in and strike without warning. He became a predator who studied human behavior, understanding exactly how to appear safe. He knew how to dress, how to speak, and how to earn trust in seconds. And when trust was gained, he would strike with calculated precision. The first disappearances seemed random, but investigators would later piece together a chilling pattern. Each victim shared similarities: young, attractive, with dark hair parted in the middle. It was as if Ted was hunting a specific type, driven by an obsession he could not control. At first, police thought the cases were unrelated. But soon, the number of missing women grew too large to ignore. The fear that spread through college campuses was unlike anything seen before. Women began traveling in groups, locking their doors, and carrying weapons for protection. But Ted was always one step ahead. His ability to appear harmless made him nearly invisible to those searching for him. He was the nightmare that wore a smile, and his killing spree was only beginning. Ted Bundy's method of luring victims was as disturbing as it was effective. He often pretended to be injured, wearing a fake cast or using crutches to appear vulnerable. When kind-hearted women stopped to help, Ted used their empathy against them. In parking lots, libraries, and public parks, he approached them with a soft, polite tone. "Could you help me carry something to my car?" he would ask, disarming them with his pleasant demeanor. Once near his car, which often had the passenger seat removed, he would overpower them with shocking strength. The violence was swift, leaving little chance for escape. Ted's mind worked like that of a predator studying prey. He would watch his targets for hours, memorizing their routines and finding the perfect moment to strike. These acts were not impulsive, they were planned with meticulous care. Each disappearance left families devastated, desperately searching for their daughters, sisters, and friends. The media began reporting more and more cases of missing women, fueling fear across multiple states. Ted traveled frequently, making it difficult for police to connect the dots. He changed locations, blending into new communities and leaving a trail of terror behind him. Witnesses who saw him described a good-looking man driving a Volkswagen Beetle, but such a description was far too common. No one suspected that the friendly law student attending political rallies was the same man kidnapping women. This dual life gave Ted a sense of power. He could sit in class, studying psychology and law, while knowing he had committed unspeakable acts hours earlier. This ability to compartmentalize his life made him even more dangerous. The country was beginning to realize they were dealing with a predator unlike any other. Fear spread beyond campuses to entire cities. The name, Ted, was whispered in dormitories, as police began to suspect a serial killer was on the loose. Yet still, Ted walked freely among them, his mask of normalcy keeping him safe. As the number of victims mounted, Ted grew bolder and more reckless. He began abducting women in broad daylight, something almost unheard of for a serial killer. One of the most chilling incidents took place at Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. On a sunny afternoon, hundreds of people were out enjoying the beach. Ted approached several women, using his now familiar arm in a sling trick, asking for help loading a sailboat. 2 women were never seen again. This brazen act shocked investigators. The killer was now hunting in public places with witnesses nearby. Police received descriptions from multiple people who had seen the man introducing himself as Ted. For the first time, authorities had a name to go with the face. A sketch was made and distributed, but Ted remained careful enough to avoid immediate capture. The case was growing into a national story, with headlines warning women to stay alert. Meanwhile, Ted maintained his relationship with girlfriends and friends who never suspected him. His charm was so convincing that even when questioned by police, he remained calm and cooperative. This ability to manipulate those around him became a crucial part of his survival. But as the investigation closed in, cracks began to show. Ted's name appeared on suspect lists in multiple states. Tips flooded in from people who knew him personally. Still, there was not enough evidence to arrest him. The frustration among investigators grew, as bodies continued to be discovered in remote wooded areas. These discoveries painted a horrific picture of what Ted was capable of. Law enforcement agencies across several states began working together, realizing they were dealing with a highly mobile killer. Ted's hunger for control seemed insatiable, driving him to take greater risks. Each crime scene told a story of methodical planning and a desire to relive the horror. And yet, in public, Ted was still the smiling, ambitious law student. The duality of his life made him one of the most terrifying figures of his time. Eventually, Ted Bundy was arrested for a traffic violation that would unravel his carefully constructed facade. Police discovered suspicious tools in his car, handcuffs, rope, and other items that hinted at darker intentions. He was linked to several disappearances, and his name became front-page news. During his trial for kidnapping, Ted represented himself, using his legal training to cross-examine witnesses. His confidence in the courtroom fascinated the media, and soon he became a household name. But even while in custody, Ted managed to escape not once, but twice. His first escape was from a courthouse library, where he jumped out of a second-story window and vanished into the mountains. He was recaptured 6 days later. His second escape, however, was far more daring. Ted lost weight over time, allowing him to squeeze through a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell. He climbed into the crawl space and walked out of the building, disappearing once again. This escape gave him a head start, and he traveled to Florida under a new identity. There, he committed some of his most brutal crimes, attacking women in a sorority house in the middle of the night. The attack left 2 women dead and several others injured. The brutality shocked the nation and finally put Ted at the top of the FBI's most wanted list. Within days, he was pulled over once again and arrested. This time, there would be no escape. Ted was now facing murder charges that carried the death penalty. The public watched closely as one of America's most notorious killers was finally brought to justice. But Ted wasn't finished manipulating the system. He turned his trial into a media spectacle, charming reporters and receiving love letters from admirers. This bizarre mix of horror and fascination made Ted Bundy a household name for years to come. Ted's trial was one of the first to be televised, and millions tuned in to watch. The courtroom became a theater, with Ted as the star performer. He smiled, joked, and even proposed marriage to a woman in the middle of the proceedings. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Bite mark impressions, eyewitness testimony, and forensic matches tied him to multiple murders. Yet Ted continued to insist on his innocence, drawing out the trial for as long as possible. The families of the victims sat in the gallery, forced to relive their worst nightmares. The nation debated whether Ted was insane or simply evil. Psychologists analyzed his behavior, trying to understand what drove a man with so much potential to commit such horrors. In the end, Ted was convicted and sentenced to death. Still, he used every appeal available to delay his execution. He granted interviews to journalists, sometimes confessing to more murders, sometimes denying everything. This back and forth gave him a twisted form of control, allowing him to remain in the spotlight. Ted eventually admitted to killing more than 30 women across several states, though experts believe the true number may be higher. He described his crimes with chilling detail, as though recounting a story rather than a confession. These interviews became infamous, offering a glimpse into the mind of a serial killer. Finally, on January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Crowds gathered outside, cheering when the news of his death was announced. For many, it was the closure they had waited years to receive. But the mystery of Ted Bundy continues to fascinate criminologists and the public alike. His story remains a dark chapter in American history, a reminder of how evil can hide behind the most charming of masks. By the mid-1970s, Ted Bundy had become a name that law enforcement whispered in fear and newspapers printed in bold headlines, a man whose charm concealed a darkness so profound that no one could have imagined it until the evidence became undeniable. Across state lines, investigators pieced together reports of missing young women, each disappearance sharing haunting similarities that suggested a single perpetrator. Bundy's modus operandi was methodical, chilling in its consistency, and deeply manipulative, exploiting kindness, trust, and social norms to lure his victims into situations where they had little hope of escape. He understood the psychology of his victims, observing their habits, routines, and social behaviors, and used that information to appear harmless while masking his predatory intentions. In public, he remained affable, intelligent, and seemingly ordinary, attending political rallies, volunteering in the community, and engaging romantically with women who never suspected his sinister urges. Friends described him as meticulous and ambitious, someone who could charm nearly anyone, and this ability became a weapon, a mask that allowed him to commit atrocities undetected for years. His psychological profile, though never formally constructed at the time, revealed a man obsessed with control, dominance, and the thrill of the hunt, each murder a carefully orchestrated act of power and manipulation. As police scrambled to connect disappearances in Washington, Oregon, and Utah, Ted continued to study human behavior with almost scientific precision, noting the fear, trust, and compliance of those around him as if conducting an experiment only he could understand. He meticulously planned his abductions, selecting isolated locations, controlling escape routes, and timing his attacks with precision. Witnesses occasionally glimpsed him in public, appearing harmless, yet law enforcement began to suspect a calculated predator at work. As his crimes escalated, Ted demonstrated a frightening adaptability, learning from close calls, modifying his methods, and evading detection despite increasing media attention. He exploited loopholes in social systems, using public sympathy, charm, and his legal knowledge to avoid early capture, often engaging directly with law enforcement without revealing his guilt. Ted's manipulations extended beyond his victims to the people around him, creating layers of deception that allowed him to live an outwardly normal life while committing heinous acts in secret. The contrast between his public persona and private actions was stark, a duality that fascinated criminologists and horrified the public once fully revealed. As investigators began to link the disappearances, Ted's arrogance grew, and he became increasingly bold, abducting women in broad daylight, in view of witnesses, and in locations previously considered too risky. This escalation demonstrated a dangerous combination of cunning and audacity, as he continued to exploit trust with a deceptive innocence that few could resist. His psychological complexity puzzled professionals. He seemed capable of empathy and normal social interaction, yet harbored violent urges that erupted with chilling consistency. By now, his activities had crossed multiple state jurisdictions, necessitating collaboration among law enforcement agencies who were unprepared for a criminal of such mobility and sophistication. Bundy's escapes from custody added another layer of terror, demonstrating both intelligence and audacity, and showing the world that he could manipulate systems designed to contain him. During these escapes, he continued his predatory behavior, taking advantage of temporary freedom to commit additional crimes while authorities scrambled to respond. The nation watched in a mixture of fear and fascination, captivated by his charm even as the magnitude of his evil became undeniable. Psychologists and criminologists later analyzed his behavior, identifying traits of psychopathy, narcissism, and manipulative cunning that made him one of the most notorious serial killers in history. Ted's interactions with women before the attacks, his careful observation, and strategic selection of victims revealed a mind obsessed with control and domination, executing a plan with frightening efficiency. While in hiding or on the run, he demonstrated patience, restraint, and timing that distinguished him from impulsive criminals, further complicating law enforcement's attempts to predict his next move. Even when confronted with suspicion or minor arrests, Ted's ability to feign innocence, charm authorities, and deflect attention allowed him to continue undetected. The media sensationalized his escapes, feeding public fear while also creating a perverse fascination with his persona. Every new crime, escape, or trial became a story in itself, contributing to a growing legend that mingled reality and myth. Ted's strategic planning, combined with his understanding of human behavior, made him nearly untouchable for years, and his victims suffered unimaginable terror. By the time of his capture in Florida, authorities realized they were dealing not just with a criminal but with a master manipulator, a man whose intellect and charm had shielded him from detection for years. His story served as a stark reminder of how evil can hide behind the most ordinary masks, and how carefully orchestrated violence can elude even the most vigilant observers. Ted Bundy's final capture in 1978 in Pensacola, Florida, marked the end of his ability to evade justice, though the full horror of his crimes was only beginning to unfold. On the night of his arrest, police stopped a suspicious vehicle and noticed inconsistencies in his story and identification. Bundy, ever the charmer, attempted to feign innocence, speaking politely and offering explanations that seemed plausible at first glance. However, law enforcement quickly discovered stolen property and items linked to previous abductions, raising immediate suspicion. The discovery triggered a deeper investigation, as authorities began connecting him to a series of brutal attacks in the region. It became apparent that Bundy had shifted his hunting grounds from the Pacific Northwest to Florida, targeting women with the same deceptive tactics he had perfected over years. Witness statements, physical evidence, and missing person reports began forming a pattern that painted a grim picture of his activities. Bundy's arrest shocked the public, many of whom had been unaware of the full scale of his crimes. As investigators began to piece together his movements, a terrifying timeline emerged, revealing multiple states affected by his predatory behavior. Florida became the focus, with particular attention on the Chi Omega sorority at Florida State University, where Bundy had committed one of his most infamous attacks. The sorority house, usually a place of camaraderie and security, became a crime scene of unimaginable horror. Bundy's calculated approach was evident. He had studied routines, understood the building's layout, and exploited opportunities without hesitation. Investigators discovered evidence linking him to the assaults, including bite marks and fingerprints, demonstrating his meticulous and methodical approach. Bundy's dual life, the outwardly polite law student and the violent predator, made it difficult for many to reconcile his public persona with the monstrosity of his crimes. Media coverage intensified, capturing the nation's attention and transforming the case into a spectacle of both fear and morbid fascination. Families of victims followed every report with heartbreak, hoping for justice but haunted by the knowledge that Bundy had taken their loved ones. As Bundy faced initial charges for kidnapping and murder, he displayed a bizarre confidence, often smiling and interacting with reporters while surrounded by law enforcement. His courtroom demeanor was unsettling. He could charm observers while standing accused of the most heinous acts imaginable. Bundy chose to represent himself, using his knowledge of law and courtroom procedure to manipulate proceedings and delay conviction. Each motion, objection, and argument served as a tool to control the narrative, extending his time in the public eye. Psychological experts analyzed his behavior, noting traits of narcissism, psychopathy, and extreme manipulative skill, and attempting to understand how he maintained composure under intense scrutiny. Despite mounting evidence, Bundy remained outwardly calm, a testament to his meticulous planning and ability to compartmentalize his life. He often contradicted himself in interviews, sometimes confessing, sometimes denying, creating confusion and fear. The nation watched as legal teams, victims' families, and investigators navigated a case that was unprecedented in both scale and audacity. Bundy's notoriety grew, not just for his crimes, but for his escapes from custody, which had previously demonstrated his resourcefulness and intelligence. Every court appearance was scrutinized, and the press covered him relentlessly, highlighting both his charm and the horror of his offenses. Bundy's manipulation extended even to his supporters, who sent letters of admiration, seemingly drawn to his charisma despite the evidence of his monstrous behavior. Public fascination mingled with terror, creating a cultural obsession that persisted long after the trials concluded. Investigators faced immense pressure to ensure justice, balancing the demands of evidence collection, witness testimony, and Bundy's legal maneuvers. Despite his attempts to control perception, physical evidence and survivor accounts began closing the circle around him. Bundy's arrogance became his weakness, revealing a man consumed by his own hubris even as authorities methodically prepared for his trial. Each step brought the world closer to understanding the full extent of his crimes and the calculated nature of his violence. The courtroom where Ted Bundy faced his murder charges became a stage for one of the most infamous legal proceedings in American history, where every glance, gesture, and word was scrutinized by millions of eyes. From the first day, Bundy projected an air of calm, smiling at spectators and journalists while sitting alongside his defense team, his charm still intact despite the overwhelming evidence against him. Prosecutors meticulously presented evidence that left little room for doubt: bite mark analysis, eyewitness testimony, photographs of crime scenes, and Bundy's own possession of items linked to his victims. The families of the victims attended each session, sitting silently as the horror of Bundy's actions was detailed with painstaking clarity. Media cameras recorded every moment, capturing Bundy's polite demeanor even as chilling details emerged, creating a bizarre juxtaposition that fascinated the public. Bundy insisted on representing himself, arguing that no attorney could better convey the complexity of his case or defend his rights, despite his clear guilt. His courtroom strategy was as calculated as his previous crimes, allowing him to manipulate proceedings, cross-examine witnesses, and delay sentencing while maintaining control over the narrative. Each question he asked seemed innocuous at first, but subtly undermined the prosecution, sowing confusion and doubt in the minds of the jury. Psychologists were called to testify, analyzing Bundy's behavior, demeanor, and motivations, yet even experts struggled to fully comprehend the duality of his personality. He could appear charming, thoughtful, and rational one moment, then confess to unspeakable acts with chilling detachment the next. Bundy's ability to manipulate perception became a case study in criminal psychology, demonstrating how charisma and intelligence can mask extreme sociopathy. The public followed the trial obsessively, with newspapers, television programs, and radio segments covering every twist, turn, and revelation. Survivors who had escaped Bundy's attacks recounted their experiences, facing him directly in court, their bravery both courageous and haunting. Each testimony painted a picture of meticulous planning, deception, and brutal violence, revealing a pattern that linked crimes across multiple states. Bundy's legal maneuvers frustrated prosecutors, yet investigators were relentless, uncovering additional evidence and corroborating witness accounts. Outside the courtroom, supporters and curious onlookers gathered, captivated by the paradox of a killer whose intelligence and charm belied his monstrous acts. Bundy's interactions with the media furthered his reputation, as interviews showcased his articulate speech, intellectual reasoning, and seemingly polite manner, creating a surreal spectacle of evil cloaked in civility. Witnesses testified to Bundy's coercion, physical strength, and ability to dominate his victims psychologically and physically, illustrating the terrifying precision of his attacks. Prosecutors highlighted Bundy's escape history, demonstrating a dangerous combination of cunning, boldness, and planning that previous criminals rarely exhibited. The jury, bombarded with evidence, photographs, and testimony, faced the daunting task of weighing Bundy's manipulative courtroom presence against the undeniable facts of his crimes. Bundy maintained a veneer of composure, occasionally smiling at cameras, conversing with his legal team, or writing notes, giving the unsettling impression that he was in complete control despite the gravity of his situation. His behavior challenged assumptions about evil, intelligence, and human charm, leaving jurors, lawyers, and the public grappling with the reality that a man could embody both sophistication and monstrous cruelty. Over weeks of testimony, the prosecution meticulously tied Bundy to multiple murders, demonstrating premeditation, manipulation, and systematic violence. Evidence included not just physical traces, but also patterns in his interactions, methods of abduction, and psychological control over his victims. Bundy's defiance, calmness, and occasional arrogance became central to the narrative, illustrating a criminal mind that understood societal systems and how to exploit them. Expert analysis detailed his manipulative tendencies, lack of empathy, and extreme narcissism, providing insight into why he could charm and terrify simultaneously. The courtroom experience became as much about observing Bundy's personality as it was about seeking justice for the victims. Public opinion oscillated between fascination, fear, and anger, with some unable to reconcile his appearance with the horrific reality of his crimes. By the end of the trial, Bundy's guilt was undeniable, the evidence overwhelming, and the verdict a matter of procedural formality rather than doubt. Yet, the spectacle he created would linger in American consciousness, a chilling reminder of the dangers posed by intellect misused for malevolent intent. After years of trials, appeals, and delays, Ted Bundy's fate was finally sealed, as the weight of his crimes left no room for further legal maneuvering. On the morning of January 24, 1989, the atmosphere in the Florida State Prison was tense, thick with anticipation, fear, and the long-awaited hope for justice from victims' families. Bundy, ever composed, was escorted to the execution chamber, his hands cuffed, his expression calm, almost detached. Witnesses reported that he remained collected, showing no overt fear, displaying a chilling acceptance of his end. The witnesses included journalists, law enforcement officers, and relatives of his victims, all gathering to witness the closure of a dark chapter in American criminal history. Bundy had spent years appealing for his life, using legal loopholes, psychological evaluations, and public fascination to delay his execution. His charm and intelligence had made him a media sensation, but it could not prevent the inevitable outcome of his actions. Inside the chamber, final preparations were made. Technicians checked the electric chair, documented procedures, and ensured that all protocols were followed meticulously. Bundy was given the opportunity for last words, a chance to speak before facing the consequences of his crimes. He chose to remain silent, conveying through his calm demeanor an unsettling mixture of resignation and control. The execution sequence began, and the electricity coursed through the chamber, bringing an end to a life that had caused untold suffering and fear. The moment was tense, filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow, as families of victims witnessed the conclusion of a prolonged nightmare. News outlets broadcast the execution, making it one of the most widely reported events of its kind, cementing Bundy's name in public consciousness. Scholars, criminologists, and psychologists studied every aspect of his life and death, attempting to understand the mind of a killer who combined charm, intelligence, and extreme violence. The execution did not erase the horror he inflicted, but it provided a form of closure for those left behind, a final acknowledgement of justice served. Bundy's story became a case study in criminal psychology, law enforcement strategy, and media ethics, illustrating how charisma and intelligence can mask profound evil. In the years following his death, Bundy's case inspired books, documentaries, and academic studies analyzing his behavior, methods, and psychological profile. Researchers examined patterns of narcissism, psychopathy, and manipulative charm, seeking insight into how such traits could manifest in violent criminality. His life and crimes continue to serve as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by unchecked sociopathy and the importance of vigilance in society. Even decades later, Bundy's name evokes fear, fascination, and horror, a symbol of both human potential and its darkest abuses. Families of his victims worked tirelessly to heal, commemorate, and ensure that the memory of their loved ones would not be overshadowed by the infamy of the killer. Bundy's execution underscored the limits of the legal system in confronting evil, highlighting the painstaking efforts required to secure justice. Public fascination did not fade, as the story of Bundy's charm, manipulation, and crimes became a cautionary tale, blending horror and curiosity in equal measure. The chilling duality of his life, the friendly neighbor and the calculated predator, remains a topic of study and reflection. Bundy's ability to manipulate, deceive, and charm even those closest to him is a central focus of criminology and psychology courses worldwide. His execution ended the life of a dangerous criminal, but it did not erase the lessons learned from his actions. Survivors, investigators, and the public were left to grapple with the implications of intelligence used for malevolent purposes. Ted Bundy's story serves as a warning about the unpredictability of human behavior, the dangers of superficial judgments, and the need for rigorous observation and caution. His crimes highlighted systemic gaps in law enforcement coordination and forensic investigation at the time. Bundy's death provided a conclusion to one of the darkest criminal careers in American history, but the legacy of fear and fascination endures. Each year, students, criminologists, and the general public revisit his story, analyzing methods, motives, and psychological makeup. In death, Bundy remains a subject of intrigue, a cautionary symbol of human duality. The nation remembered not just the killer, but also the courage of victims, survivors, and law enforcement who pursued justice relentlessly. Ted Bundy's life, crimes, trial, and execution collectively illustrate the terrifying capacity of one individual to exploit charm, intelligence, and trust to commit extraordinary violence. The execution chamber closed the final chapter on his physical presence, but the narrative of his actions continues to echo in cultural and academic discourse. Bundy's story is a dark mirror, reflecting both the potential for human evil and the resilience of those who confront it. His life serves as an enduring lesson in vigilance, investigation, and the consequences of unchecked malevolence. Ted Bundy's crimes left an indelible mark on American society, reshaping how law enforcement, the media, and the public approached the terrifying reality of serial killers. His ability to charm, manipulate, and deceive forced a reevaluation of assumptions about appearances, intelligence, and trust, demonstrating that evil could exist behind the most ordinary of masks. Psychologists studied his behavior extensively, seeking to understand the combination of narcissism, psychopathy, and manipulative genius that allowed him to operate undetected for so long. Criminologists used Bundy's case as a foundation for developing modern profiling techniques, linking patterns in victim selection, abduction methods, and criminal psychology to anticipate the behaviors of future offenders. His escapes from custody highlighted vulnerabilities in law enforcement systems, prompting procedural reforms in security and detention practices across multiple states. Media coverage of his trial, crimes, and execution transformed public perception, blending fascination with horror and setting a precedent for televised criminal proceedings. Survivors' testimonies became crucial in shaping policies on victim advocacy, witness protection, and trauma-informed interviewing, ensuring that their voices influenced justice and prevention. The Bundy case forced a nationwide conversation about personal safety, particularly for women traveling alone, reshaping cultural norms and heightening awareness of predator behavior. Academic studies examined his dual life, analyzing the dissonance between outward charm and hidden brutality to better understand sociopathy and behavioral manipulation. His notoriety inspired both fear and morbid curiosity, resulting in books, documentaries, and ongoing media discussion that examined not just his crimes but his psychology and methodical planning. Law enforcement agencies integrated lessons from Bundy into training programs, emphasizing observation, pattern recognition, and critical thinking in criminal investigations. His case underscored the importance of interjurisdictional communication, as his crimes spanned multiple states and exposed weaknesses in coordination. Psychologists debated the roots of his behavior, questioning whether childhood trauma, genetic predisposition, or environmental factors had created such extreme violence. Bundy's ability to exploit empathy, trust, and societal norms became a central study in manipulation, illustrating the dangers posed by highly intelligent predators. His life and crimes prompted broader discussions about the media's role in sensationalizing criminals and the ethical responsibility of reporting facts without inadvertently glorifying violence. The Bundy legacy also spurred improvements in forensic science, including bite mark analysis, fingerprint identification, and criminal profiling, tools that would become crucial in future cases. Society grappled with the paradox of being simultaneously repulsed and fascinated by a man capable of both charm and monstrous cruelty. His story is frequently cited in psychology, criminology, and sociology courses as a case study in extreme antisocial behavior, risk assessment, and criminal intelligence. Survivor advocacy grew stronger, inspiring legislation and community programs designed to educate the public and prevent predatory crimes. Bundy's crimes became a lens through which the public examined societal vulnerabilities, questioning assumptions about safety, trust, and the hidden potential for evil. Law enforcement studies highlighted the necessity of forensic rigor, persistence, and attention to seemingly minor details in tracking and capturing serial offenders. His psychological profile continues to inform assessments of similar criminals, offering insight into the combination of intelligence, manipulation, and pathological behavior. The cultural memory of Bundy serves as a cautionary tale about the unpredictability of human nature and the consequences of superficial judgments. Media portrayals, survivor accounts, and academic research converge to keep the story alive, ensuring that the lessons of his crimes remain relevant. His trial and execution demonstrated the limits of legal systems when confronting highly manipulative individuals and emphasized the importance of comprehensive evidence gathering. The fascination with Bundy reflects both horror and a collective attempt to understand evil, the human mind, and societal vulnerability. Today, the name Bundy evokes fear, caution, and a reminder of how charm and intelligence can mask profound malevolence. His crimes reshaped criminal investigation protocols, victim support systems, and forensic science methods, leaving a lasting institutional legacy. Families of victims, survivors, and law enforcement professionals continue to share insights, keeping memory and awareness alive. Bundy's life is a stark warning of the dangers posed by those who exploit trust, knowledge, and charisma to commit unspeakable acts. Society continues to study, debate, and reflect upon his methods, motives, and psychological makeup. Ted Bundy's story is a testament to human resilience, the importance of vigilance, and the need for continuous improvement in criminal justice practices. Even decades after his death, Bundy remains a central figure in discussions of serial criminal behavior, human psychology, and cultural fascination with evil. His legacy, though horrifying, provides critical lessons in awareness, prevention, and the pursuit of justice. Through careful analysis, training, and remembrance, society seeks to honor victims while learning from the terrifying capabilities of one of history's most notorious serial killers. Even decades after his execution, Ted Bundy's influence on American culture remains profound, a dark mirror reflecting both fear and fascination with human evil. His crimes changed the way communities perceive personal safety, particularly for young women, forcing increased awareness of potential threats in everyday situations. Law enforcement agencies across the country integrated lessons from his behavior into training programs, emphasizing observation, critical thinking, and profiling strategies to prevent similar atrocities. Bundy's case demonstrated how intelligence, charm, and manipulation could allow a predator to operate undetected, teaching society that danger often hides behind normalcy. Criminologists continue to study his methods, analyzing patterns in victim selection, abduction, and evasion, uncovering insights into the operational psychology of serial offenders. Psychologists have dissected his personality, identifying traits of extreme narcissism, lack of empathy, and compulsive control, providing benchmarks for understanding modern predatory behavior. His story influenced media portrayals of serial killers, from books to documentaries, shaping public understanding of criminal psychology while sparking both fear and morbid curiosity. Survivor advocacy emerged stronger as a response, with programs designed to educate, support, and empower those at risk of similar crimes. Communities became more vigilant, implementing safety measures, reporting suspicious behavior, and promoting public awareness campaigns. The psychological terror Bundy inflicted extends beyond direct victims, touching the collective consciousness of society and shaping a cultural understanding of evil. His case prompted reforms in legal procedures, emphasizing interstate communication, coordinated investigations, and the necessity of thorough forensic analysis. Media ethics were scrutinized, as sensational coverage risked glorifying a killer while simultaneously informing the public. Bundy's ability to charm and deceive inspired both fascination and horror, a paradox that continues to captivate audiences and scholars alike. His escapes from custody illustrated flaws in security protocols, leading to structural and procedural reforms in detention facilities nationwide. Law enforcement studied every aspect of his movements, learning how criminals exploit weaknesses in systems, routines, and trust. Academic discussions now often use Bundy as a case study in courses on criminal behavior, psychology, and law enforcement strategy. Families affected by his crimes became advocates for victim rights, safety awareness, and criminal justice reform, ensuring that lessons from tragedy were not forgotten. Bundy's story demonstrates the complexity of human behavior, the danger of superficial assessments, and the terrifying potential of manipulative intellect. The cultural fascination with Bundy reflects society's need to understand evil while confronting its consequences, blending horror with critical inquiry. Psychologists emphasize that individuals like Bundy represent extreme anomalies, yet their study is crucial in preventing future crimes. His legacy has informed modern criminal profiling, helping law enforcement predict, apprehend, and understand similar offenders. The story of Bundy serves as a warning. Intelligence, charisma, and strategic thinking can become tools of unimaginable destruction when combined with malevolence. Educational programs, public awareness campaigns, and forensic advancements are all indirect outcomes of his criminal career. Researchers study how Bundy exploited social norms, trust, and kindness to manipulate victims and authorities alike, highlighting the importance of vigilance. Media coverage, survivor accounts, and academic studies continue to document his crimes, ensuring the lessons of history are not lost. Even in death, Bundy's name evokes fear, curiosity, and reflection on societal vulnerabilities and the human capacity for evil. Communities affected by his actions learn to adapt, educate, and protect future generations through awareness and advocacy. Legal frameworks and investigative methods evolved in response, with new protocols for handling serial crimes and cross-jurisdictional cases. The fear, fascination, and lessons surrounding Bundy remain culturally and academically significant, influencing crime prevention, psychology, and public awareness. His manipulative genius serves as a cautionary example of how appearances can be deceiving and evil can hide in plain sight. Survivors' bravery continues to inspire, reminding the world of resilience and the importance of confronting danger directly. Bundy's case reshaped societal perceptions of criminal behavior, highlighting the necessity for vigilance, skepticism, and informed awareness. Even now, new generations study his crimes, his methods, and his psychology, learning to recognize the signs of predatory manipulation. The legacy of Ted Bundy is a mixture of horror, fascination, and enduring lessons, ensuring that the story continues to teach, warn, and intrigue. Ted Bundy's psychological profile remains one of the most studied in criminal history, providing insight into a mind capable of extreme manipulation and deception. Experts have dissected his behavior, noting traits of narcissism, psychopathy, and a remarkable capacity for charm that allowed him to gain trust effortlessly. Bundy's interactions with society were deceptively ordinary, presenting a friendly, intelligent, and polite persona that masked his predatory instincts. He understood social norms, routines, and vulnerabilities, exploiting them to lure victims into dangerous situations with calculated precision. Bundy's charisma allowed him to navigate legal systems, media scrutiny, and personal relationships, maintaining control even in situations that would destabilize most individuals. Psychologists highlight his ability to compartmentalize, separating his public image from his criminal impulses, a skill that prolonged his evasion of justice. His calculated manipulation extended to law enforcement, as he feigned cooperation, charm, and intelligence to create doubt and delay prosecution. Bundy's social skills, while superficially admirable, were instruments of predation, allowing him to disarm, confuse, and control those around him. The duality of his personality challenges assumptions about human nature, intelligence, and the potential for evil hidden behind a normal exterior. His crimes forced psychologists to examine the interplay between intelligence, manipulation, and moral deficiency in extreme sociopathy. Survivors and victims' families became critical in shaping understanding, highlighting the human impact and emotional trauma caused by predatory behavior. Bundy's ability to feign empathy, charm acquaintances, and manipulate authority figures created a terrifying paradox, illustrating how easily trust can be exploited. The long-term psychological impact on survivors includes PTSD, anxiety, and persistent vigilance, consequences that persist decades after the crimes. Society at large experienced collective fear, especially in the regions where Bundy operated, altering behavior, routines, and perceptions of safety. Media portrayal of Bundy amplified both fascination and terror, balancing education with sensationalism and sometimes inadvertently glorifying his intellect. Academics study Bundy not only to understand his psychology but to develop preventive strategies, intervention models, and risk assessment frameworks. Bundy's crimes reveal patterns in predator behavior, careful planning, opportunistic targeting, and psychological manipulation to minimize detection. He exploited societal assumptions about gender, appearance, and behavior to create opportunities for his crimes. Psychological research into Bundy emphasizes the importance of early detection of antisocial tendencies and the need for systemic awareness. Law enforcement agencies use lessons from his case to train officers in profiling, risk analysis, and behavioral recognition. Bundy's charm and outward normalcy demonstrate how dangerous individuals can blend into society, evading suspicion until it is too late. Survivors' testimonies provide essential context, illustrating the terror, cunning, and manipulation involved in each encounter. Counseling, therapy, and support systems for survivors were strengthened in response to cases like Bundy's, influencing modern victim advocacy. Academic literature continues to cite Bundy as an archetype of the intelligent, manipulative serial killer, shaping curricula and research agendas. Media ethics debates emerged, questioning the impact of extensive coverage on public perception, fear, and fascination with criminals. Bundy's life demonstrates the interplay between intellect, personality, and the dark capacity for violence, challenging simplistic notions of morality. His ability to plan, execute, and evade reveals the terrifying potential of human cunning combined with pathological behavior. The societal response to Bundy shaped legal reforms, forensic advancements, and procedural protocols for handling high-risk criminals. His case illustrates the importance of critical thinking, observation, and skepticism when assessing seemingly normal individuals. Bundy's crimes prompted broader conversations about social responsibility, public safety, and awareness in daily life. Education programs for at-risk populations, safety initiatives, and law enforcement strategies were influenced by lessons drawn from his actions. The enduring fascination with Bundy reflects the tension between fear, curiosity, and the desire to understand human evil. His psychological profile remains a benchmark in criminology, emphasizing the importance of studying extremes in human behavior. Cultural portrayals continue to explore his duality, intellect, and manipulation, demonstrating the complexity of the case. Survivors' resilience, coupled with systemic reform, ensures that lessons from Bundy's life and crimes continue to shape society. The dual narrative of terror and intellect embedded in Bundy's story serves as a warning, a study, and a reflection on human potential for both charm and destruction. His legacy, while horrifying, informs law enforcement, psychology, and cultural understanding, making the study of Bundy essential for contemporary criminology. Ted Bundy's story infiltrated popular culture almost immediately, as journalists, authors, and filmmakers sought to document, dramatize, and analyze his crimes. The media coverage, extensive and often sensational, highlighted his charm, intelligence, and horrific acts, creating a narrative that simultaneously terrified and fascinated the public. Newspapers chronicled every detail of his trials, escapes, and personal life, while television broadcasts brought real-time accounts of courtroom proceedings into American living rooms. Books analyzing Bundy ranged from psychological examinations to true crime storytelling, capturing both the procedural elements and the human drama surrounding his case. Documentaries and dramatizations explored his dual nature, the juxtaposition of a seemingly ordinary man with the capacity for extreme violence, creating a narrative that was both compelling and chilling. Scholars and writers debated the ethics of media portrayal, concerned that emphasizing Bundy's intelligence and charisma might overshadow the experiences of his victims. True crime culture evolved in part because of Bundy, as public interest in criminal psychology, profiling, and forensic investigation grew dramatically. Bundy's crimes inspired educational curricula in psychology and criminology, demonstrating the practical application of behavioral studies to real-world scenarios. His notoriety influenced law enforcement training, highlighting the need for comprehensive understanding of manipulative offenders and the development of profiling methods. Popular fascination with Bundy reflected deeper societal questions: how evil could masquerade as ordinary, and how intellect could facilitate unimaginable harm. Cultural representations often focused on his psychological profile, dissecting traits of narcissism, manipulation, and sociopathy for audiences eager to understand the mind of a killer. Survivors' perspectives were sometimes overshadowed in media narratives, prompting advocacy for victim-centered storytelling and ethical reporting practices. Films and television programs dramatized Bundy's life, emphasizing suspense, deception, and moral conflict, creating an enduring narrative of fear and fascination. Public exhibitions, podcasts, and investigative series continue to explore Bundy's actions, providing context for contemporary discussions of serial offenders. Scholars note that Bundy's ability to charm, deceive, and evade detection forced a reevaluation of societal assumptions about trust, safety, and appearance. His story became a case study in risk perception, illustrating how easily confidence, politeness, and intelligence can mask malevolence. Media fascination also fueled academic curiosity, inspiring research into patterns of predatory behavior, victimology, and law enforcement strategies. Bundy's crimes underscored the importance of forensic science, legal vigilance, and behavioral profiling, cementing his case as a foundational example in multiple fields. Cultural discussions about Bundy often center on the paradox of empathy and horror, as audiences struggle to reconcile the human-like aspects of his persona with his horrific acts. True crime enthusiasts and scholars analyze his case to identify warning signs, behavioral patterns, and preventive strategies applicable to modern law enforcement. The persistent fascination with Bundy reflects society's desire to understand evil, its origins, and its manifestations in intelligent, socially adept individuals. Media depictions often grapple with the tension between storytelling and ethical responsibility, attempting to balance engagement with respect for victims. Bundy's influence on popular culture demonstrates how one individual's crimes can shape public consciousness, fear, and curiosity for generations. The narratives surrounding him explore morality, psychology, and justice, prompting reflection on both societal vulnerability and resilience. Audiences are drawn to the dramatic contrast between Bundy's charm and the brutality of his actions, a paradox that continues to inspire books, studies, and documentaries. His story has become a cultural touchstone, referenced in discussions of criminology, psychology, and media ethics. Bundy's case encourages critical thinking about manipulation, appearances, and social behavior, lessons that extend beyond law enforcement into everyday life. The intersection of media coverage, psychological analysis, and public fascination illustrates the complex legacy of his crimes. By studying Bundy, society gains insight into human behavior, the mechanics of predation, and the challenges of justice. His enduring presence in culture reflects both horror and a desire to comprehend the extraordinary combination of intelligence and evil. Survivors' stories remain central, ensuring that the narrative does not lose sight of the human cost of Bundy's actions. Bundy's influence on popular culture, criminal psychology, and public consciousness demonstrates the lasting impact one individual can have on collective understanding of crime and morality. The societal impact of Ted Bundy's crimes extended far beyond the immediate victims and their families, shaping cultural awareness and public safety initiatives nationwide. Communities became more cautious, implementing strategies to protect vulnerable populations, particularly young women traveling alone or in isolated areas. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states revised investigative protocols, improving communication, coordination, and interjurisdictional collaboration in response to Bundy's multi-state crimes. His escapes exposed flaws in security systems, prompting stricter detention procedures enhanced monitoring, and policy reforms in correctional facilities. The psychological examination of Bundy informed profiling methods, teaching authorities to recognize behavioral patterns, manipulative tendencies, and signs of predatory intelligence. Public discourse shifted, emphasizing education on recognizing deception, manipulation, and suspicious behavior in everyday interactions. Survivor advocacy gained momentum, leading to legislative and community programs designed to empower victims and prevent predatory crimes. The long-term psychological impact of Bundy's actions highlighted the need for trauma-informed care, counseling, and mental health support for survivors and families. His case became a cornerstone in criminology and psychology, illustrating the dangers posed by sociopathy, narcissism, and unchecked intelligence directed toward harm. Bundy's ability to charm and deceive law enforcement, victims, and the public revealed the importance of critical observation and skepticism in safety practices. Educational programs incorporated his story to illustrate the intersection of criminal behavior, psychology, and societal vulnerability. The media's role in covering Bundy's trials and crimes prompted debates on responsible reporting, sensationalism, and ethical storytelling. Legal systems learned from Bundy's case, strengthening procedures for high-risk offenders and improving coordination between states. Psychological studies examined his duality, the outwardly friendly persona and the hidden malevolent intentions, to inform understanding of extreme antisocial behavior. Bundy's legacy influenced training programs for law enforcement, social workers, and forensic investigators, emphasizing vigilance, pattern recognition, and strategic intervention. Communities implemented awareness campaigns inspired by his crimes, teaching safety strategies and encouraging reporting of suspicious activity. His story serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting how intellect, charisma, and social skill can be exploited for predation. Public perception of personal safety evolved, with increased attention to situational awareness, trust boundaries, and self-protection strategies. Bundy's crimes became reference points in legal studies, psychological research, and criminal justice curricula, ensuring long-term lessons from his life and actions. The cultural fascination with Bundy also encouraged ethical discussions about true crime, media influence, and victim-centered storytelling. Psychological profiling techniques were refined, drawing on his behavior to predict potential risks posed by other offenders. Survivor voices gained recognition, influencing public policy, awareness campaigns, and educational initiatives focused on safety and resilience. Bundy's crimes demonstrated the complexity of predicting human behavior, reinforcing the importance of research, observation, and forensic innovation. Communities affected by his actions sought closure through advocacy, remembrance, and initiatives designed to educate future generations. The legal system's handling of Bundy informed procedures for evidence management, trial protocols, and risk assessment in criminal proceedings. Psychological, sociological, and criminological studies used Bundy as a case study in extreme manipulation, deception, and criminal planning. Public safety campaigns drew lessons from his crimes, emphasizing vigilance, trust, and awareness of manipulative behavior. Bundy's duality challenges conventional understanding of good and evil, intelligence and morality, and the dangers of surface impressions. His life and crimes continue to inspire reflection on human behavior, societal responsibility, and the need for vigilance. Law enforcement, psychologists, and academics study his methods to prevent similar tragedies and improve intervention strategies. Survivor advocacy remains a vital aspect of his legacy, highlighting courage, resilience, and the importance of support systems. The cultural, legal, and psychological lessons drawn from Bundy ensure that society remembers both the victims and the implications of his crimes. His story, horrifying and fascinating, remains a cornerstone of modern criminology, forensic psychology, and public awareness. Ted Bundy's legacy illustrates that intelligence without empathy can become a tool of destruction, necessitating vigilance and proactive safety measures. The combination of media attention, psychological study, and survivor advocacy ensures that his story continues to educate, warn, and influence society. Ted Bundy's life and crimes leave a permanent imprint on American society, a chilling reminder of how intelligence, charm, and sociopathy can intersect to create extraordinary danger. His story demonstrates that appearances are deceptive, that even the most charismatic and seemingly ordinary individuals can harbor monstrous intentions. The lessons learned from Bundy's actions span law enforcement, psychology, criminology, and public awareness, illustrating the necessity of vigilance, critical thinking, and systemic preparedness. His crimes exposed vulnerabilities in legal systems, detention procedures, and interstate coordination, prompting reforms that continue to protect communities. Survivor accounts highlight the enduring human impact of his crimes, emphasizing trauma, resilience, and the importance of victim-centered advocacy. The media's role in documenting Bundy's story demonstrates the delicate balance between informing the public and sensationalizing evil, a challenge still relevant in contemporary reporting. Psychologists continue to study his behavior to understand manipulation, predation, and extreme antisocial tendencies, ensuring that knowledge gained from his life informs prevention strategies. Bundy's ability to charm, deceive, and evade detection illustrates how intelligence can be weaponized when coupled with moral deficiency. Communities across the United States were forever changed, adopting heightened safety awareness, preventative measures, and proactive communication strategies. His case serves as a benchmark in criminal profiling, teaching law enforcement to recognize subtle warning signs, patterns of behavior, and psychological manipulation. Cultural fascination with Bundy persists, a mixture of horror, curiosity, and the human desire to comprehend the nature of evil. Educational programs use his story to teach risk assessment, critical observation, and situational awareness, highlighting practical applications beyond criminal justice. Survivor advocacy and legislative reforms inspired by Bundy's crimes ensure that victims' experiences shape public policy, social awareness, and community safety initiatives. His escapes from custody and manipulative behavior forced authorities to rethink security protocols, procedural safeguards, and interagency collaboration. Bundy's duality, the charming, intelligent facade masking violent impulses, provides insight into the complexity of human behavior and the unpredictability of sociopathy. Media depictions continue to analyze and dramatize his life, emphasizing the intersection of intelligence, manipulation, and moral corruption. His story encourages society to maintain vigilance, question assumptions, and educate populations on personal safety and predator behavior. The psychological, cultural, and legal legacy of Bundy serves as a continuous warning against complacency and superficial judgment. Law enforcement professionals study his case to refine investigative techniques, forensic science, and criminal profiling methodologies. The public fascination with Bundy reinforces the tension between horror and curiosity, prompting reflection on human morality and societal vulnerability. Survivor voices remain central to the narrative, ensuring that education, awareness, and remembrance are prioritized over notoriety. Bundy's actions catalyzed legal and institutional reforms, improving evidence collection, trial procedures, and risk management in criminal investigations. Psychological research on his personality and behavior has informed approaches to identifying manipulative, predatory individuals. Communities affected by Bundy's crimes implemented proactive safety measures, educational programs, and public awareness campaigns. His legacy serves as a cautionary tale, illustrating the consequences of intelligence devoid of empathy or conscience. Bundy's crimes influenced cultural understanding of evil, deception, and the hidden potential for danger in seemingly ordinary individuals. Academic analysis continues to explore his methods, behavioral patterns, and psychological profile, contributing to preventive and investigative frameworks. His notoriety, while unsettling, provides society with lessons in vigilance, critical thinking, and preparedness. The dual narrative of terror and intellect embedded in Bundy's life ensures that both psychological study and cultural awareness remain relevant. His case remains a cornerstone in criminology, forensic psychology, and public education on predator behavior. Bundy's life and crimes underscore the importance of observation, analysis, and education in preventing similar tragedies. Survivor advocacy, media ethics, and law enforcement training continue to be shaped by lessons learned from his actions. His story serves as a reminder of human resilience, the necessity of vigilance, and the enduring importance of justice. Even decades later, Ted Bundy's name evokes fear, reflection, and the ongoing pursuit of understanding the darkest aspects of human behavior. Society continues to learn from his crimes, using his life as a framework for education, prevention, and awareness. The enduring legacy of Ted Bundy ensures that both victims and society benefit from the lessons of history, vigilance, and resilience. The chilling story of Ted Bundy reminds us that evil can hide behind charm, intelligence, and a seemingly ordinary facade. His life and crimes teach important lessons about vigilance, trust, and the human psyche, while also highlighting the resilience of survivors and the dedication of law enforcement. By studying cases like Bundy's, we gain insight into criminal behavior, prevention strategies, and the importance of awareness in everyday life. Remembering the victims is essential, as their stories and courage deserve to be honored and never forgotten. If you found this story both fascinating and educational, make sure to support our channel. Subscribe to stay updated with more true crime stories, mysterious historical cases, and in-depth analyses of the world's most notorious criminals. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode, and join our community of true crime enthusiasts. Comment below to share your thoughts or suggest the next case you want us to cover. Every like, share, and subscription helps us continue creating detailed, engaging storytelling content that brings history and mystery to life. Stay safe, stay curious, and keep questioning the world around you.